the next 10 minutes, I will summarize what are the current evidences and the guidelines regarding the adolescent PCOS. So what is adolescent? WHO defined adolescent as a young people between age of 10 to 19 years. And some of the recent guidelines have taken as a gynecological age into the consideration for the PCO studies. And if a gynecological age of less than 8 years, then it is adolescent. So what is adolescent PCOS? This definition defines the actually PCOS pathology, which is unexplained, persistent, hyperandrogenic anovulation. So it is a significant health issue with reproductive, metabolic, and psychological dimensions. Incidence is around 6 to 10% in an Indian adolescent. However, it varies with the criteria applied. And there is ethnic variation in the presentation and manifestation of PCOS. So we need to have an accurate diagnosis to prevent the overdiagnosis or underdiagnosis, because the PCOS has a reproductive, metabolic, and psychological dimensions. So what is the difference in adult and adolescent PCOS? Oligomenorrhea, which is a common and physiological post-menarche, and it is not specific to adolescent with PCOS. And ovulatory cycles can be common up to 6 years post-menarche. Acne is a transitory finding in adolescents, and PCO morphology can be present in normal adolescent up to 30 to 35%. So what the guidelines say about the ovulatory dysfunction? Actually, Jindal madam have already explained all these guidelines. So what defines as irregular menstrual periods? So normal in the first day post-puberty. So 1 to 3 years, less than 21 days or more than 45 days, more than 3 years post-menarche to menopause is 21 days or more than 35 days or less than 8 cycles per year. And even if post-menarche 1 year, if any cycle is of more than 90 days, then it will constitute as a irregular menstrual cycle, or primary amenorrhea by the age of 15 or more than 3 year post-thalarchy. Progesterone can be done in the adolescent who have normal cycles, and it has to be done in the mid-luteal phase. So most of the guidelines say that if there are irregular menstrual cycles more than 2 years post-menarche, so evaluation for PCOS should be done. So what is clinical hyperandrogenism? Complete or comprehensive history and physical examination has to be done for hirsutism, which is excessive terminal hairs in androgen sensitive area, male-like pattern. And gold standard is modified Ferriman-Galloway score. However, different scores have been used in different ethnicities, but usually more than 6 to 8 is taken as a hirsutism, and it has some limitation because it is subjective and it varies with ethnicity. So moderate to severe comedone acne, more than 10 facial lesion, or moderate inflammatory acne are taken as evidence of clinical hyperandrogenism in adolescent. However, there is no universally accepted visual assessment scale. Alopecia is usually not recommended in adolescents. So in adolescent, the evidence of clinical hyperandrogenism is moderate to severe acne and hirsutism. So while examining the adolescents, always look for the sign of virilization or defeminization, like lateromegaly, male pattern balding, severe hirsutism, vascularization, breast atrophy, or loss of glutefemoral adiposity. And one should always note that there is rapid progression of symptoms or not, because they are mainly present in the uh, ovarian or adrenal tumor because of rapid progression. If you see the fallacies of modified Ferriman-Galloway scale, it is mainly dependent on the ethnicity, and even for the Chinese one, more than 2 cannabis is taken as a significant, and even for the Eastern or these Mediterranean, more than 10 modified FGS is taken as significant. So biochemical hyperandrogenemia, free testosterone, it is elevated in 50 to 60% of the patients, and it is the more sensitive test for the biochemical hyperandrogenism. However, there are limitation to the assays because most of the assays are not very accurate, and so direct equilibrium or LCM as a gold standard for this. For total testosterone is elevated in 20 to 30% of the adolescents, and extraction chromatography or LCMS are also taken as the standard test assays for this. Most of other assays are unreliable. Even higher, very high level of testosterone suggest ovarian or adrenal neoplasm. So free androgen excess, it is a measure of free testosterone, and it is taken as a ratio of total testosterone to sex hormone binding globulin. DHEAS and androstenedione are mildly elevated, however, very high level of these are suggestive of adrenal neoplasm. And all these tests has to be done in the early follicular phase. There are no cutoff for adolescent which have been defined. So adult cutoff and SA specific cutoff has to be used. Anti-Mullerian hormone, it is exclusively produced by granular cell of ovaries, and concentration of AMH is not altered significantly throughout the menstrual cycle. And most of the studies have shown that the enterofollicular count, oligoanovulation, and hyperandrogenism are well correlated with the AMH levels. Though levels are not defined, but with commonly used assays, more than 6 nanogram per ml is taken as significant. And it should not be used as an alternative test for a single test for the diagnosis of PCOS. So other disorders which mimic the PCOS must be excluded. So for thyroid disorders, thyroid profile has to be done. Congenital adrenal hyperplasia, 17 hydroxyprogesterone is to be done. Normal level is less than 2 nanogram per ml. And if it is more than 2 nanogram per ml, ACTH stimulation with 250 microgram ACTH, which has to be done. Hyperprolactinemia must be ruled out, and serum prolactin levels must be interpreted cautiously in children with adolescent, because mild hyperprolactinemia is a common finding in PCOS. If clinically indicated, then Cushing syndrome and acromegaly must be ruled out. All the guidelines do not recommend LH, FSH, LH, FSH ratio, AMH, or test for insulin resistance for the diagnosis of PCOS. So polycystic ovarian morphology, at least in one ovary, more than 12 number of follicles. However, it depends upon the ultrasound probe. If it is more than 8 megahertz, then more than 20 number. Size of 2 to 9 mm. Ovarian volume should be more than 10 ml, and there should be no dominant follicle or cyst. There are a lot of controversies regarding the USG ultrasound evaluation, whether it should be done transvaginally or transabdominally in adolescent, because of ethical and practical issues in the adolescents. And multifollicular ovaries can be a common feature in normal feature in adolescents, because of 30% to up to 30% of the adolescent may have a normal PCOS morphology. So what do the guidelines say about the PCO morphology? So endocrine society clinical practice guidelines, they say that the PCO morphology and aneuploidy symptoms are not sufficient for the diagnosis of PCOS. And ultrasound should not be used for the diagnosis of PCOS in those of gynecological age less than 8 years. National Institute of Health and Pediatric Endocrine Society do not include the PCO morphology in their criteria. So mainly the clinical and biochemical hyperandrogenism are mainstay for the diagnosis in adolescents. So different guidelines and criteria exist to define the adolescent PCOS. So Amsterdam criteria, which include all these three: oligoanovulation, clinical and biochemical hyperandrogenism, and polycystic ovarian or ultrasound. Endocrine Society do not consider the PCO morphology, and Pediatric Endocrine Society, they also do not consider PCO morphology in their criteria. There are very strict criteria also, like Sultan and Paris, which is the only criteria which consider hyperinsulinemia in their criteria, and they are very strict and require 4 out of 5. So all the guidelines says that the adolescent PCOS must be screened for obesity, for depression and anxiety according to history or questionnaire, and then they should be appropriately referred to a psychiatrist or psychologist. Impaired glucose tolerance or type 2 diabetes through OGTT or HbA1c, sleep disorder breathing or obstructive sleep apnea, and every PCO adolescent must be screened for the cardiovascular risk factors. So what is the treatment of adolescent PCOS? So adolescent PCOS, whether obese or non-obese, lifestyle modification has to be started initially. So diet should be balanced and with aim of restriction of calories, uh, up to 5% loss in obese, and in non-obese at least to maintain the weights. So exercise should be around 60 minutes per day, moderate to vigorous activity. And since diet and exercise, there is always a relapse and there is no, so behavioral strategies like goal setting of and activity should be measurable, achievable, and goal should be realistic. Self-monitoring, problem solving, and reinforcing the change in relapse prevention has to be done. However, most of the studies says that there is no significant effect of these lifestyle modification on clinical and biochemical hyperandrogenemia. So pharmacological treatment, uh, the first line is uh, OCPs, whether patch or vaginal ring, in an adolescent with PCOS and evidence of clinical hyperandrogenism or irregular menstrual cycles. But OCPs can be started in adolescents who are at risk but not diagnosed with PCOS for the menstrual irregularity and hyperandrogenism. All the combined OCPs have a similar efficacy. Lowest dose of ethinyl estradiol should be used. 35 microgram ethyl estradiol and cyproterone are usually not considered a first line for PCOS. And absolute contraindication for OCPs are according to WHO only. And every adolescent who has to be started on OCPs, a cardiovascular risk and unexplained vaginal bleeding has to be ruled out. So metformin, it is
Dr.
not to be
Kush,
used
we are
as
running out of time. Can we?
uh,
Yeah.
metformin, not to be used as the first line therapy, or however it can be used in obese PCOS. Other therapies are basically inositol, anti-obesity drugs, and N-acetyl cysteine are experimental only. So to conclude, clinical and biochemical hyperandrogenism or these are essential criteria. PCO morphology, if clinically indicated, exclude three disorders: thyroid, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, and hyperproteinemia. Lifestyle modification is the first line therapy, and pharmacotherapy has to be individualized, and more longitudinal studies are required in adolescents. Thank you.